Welcome back to Morning at NTV. Just in case you're joining us, you're with me, Malaki Vilodera and Romeo Busiku. And of course, you can tag us directly on hashtag Morning at NTV. Just search for Malaki Vilodera or Romeo Busiku, and we'll be happy to engage with you. We're getting into our Kickstarter conversation. Now, Action Aid Uganda has called on the government to expedite the witness protection law, whose proposal has been in the pipeline since 2015. It has also reiterated its opposition to the creation of parallel corruption-fighting institutions, saying that such undertakings are weakening the existing institutions created by law. This is an action aid flagged off and the anti-corruption caravan to the northern Uganda. But today now we have that conversation asking, have we lost this fight? The fight against graft. So joining us this morning, I do have Mr. Henry Nixon of Wall. He is the Director Business Development at Action Aid Uganda. Many thanks for joining us, sir. Welcome to Morning at NTV.
Good morning, Mr. Nixon.
My pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So you're against the creation of parallel corruption-fighting institutions. Why are you so against that regulation?
Uganda has got one of the most robust infrastructure in terms of the constitutional mandated institutions for fighting corruption. Very elaborate indeed. And therefore, any creation of any other institution is just a glorification of institutions. It's actually, it works to undermine already the institutions that exist. What we should be doing as a country is actually strengthening the ones that are already there, ensuring that we are funding them, and ensuring that we are respecting their jurisdiction.
Mr. Nixon, maybe the existing laws were not that tough, and maybe government thinks by creation of parallel institutions to fight this, they may be adding more support to the already existing laws. What do you make of that?
No, I don't think it is about the creation of the laws to strengthen is not a problem. That's why we're actually saying that the bill on protection of witnesses should be passed. It does not mean creating a new institution. It's like saying you're creating a new Ugandan citizen. You cannot create that.
So the creation of parallel corruption-fighting institutions will only exacerbate corruption in Uganda?
Yes, it actually works to undermine the already existing institutions. Because if government that has already commissioned and passed these institutions go again to speak against the existing institutions, which is already in place, I think it's not right.
But you see, when the president actually launched the State House anti-corruption unit, so far they've been doing well, so to speak. In the news, we've seen the number of cases they've been able to pretty much get into, and now they're in the process of investigation, so to speak. That was one of the parallel, of course, institutions established. So from that point of view, don't you think maybe your view ought to maybe, you know, be reflected again, because it was instituted and they're doing amazingly well, so to speak.
Now, if you were really to ask, under what law are they working? You see, we need to be a really a country that follows the law, because you see, the president is thinking right about something must happen. What is it that IGG cannot do? What is it that they didn't do for IGG to actually effect that?
Don't you
because
think,
it's also the
right.
appointment of, of the president. So we think that it is about supporting the existing institutions. It's like trying to replace away police. Police role is constitutionally mandated. Strengthen the police. Strengthen the...
Right.
You cannot come up with, say now, extra judicial, you say we are now going not to have the current anti-corruption court, let's go beyond that. It must still be within that anti-corruption court.
So Nixon,
so what we are therefore saying
right.
is that where there is uncoordinated institutions, it can just cause confusion.
Nixon, let me just spell out some of the laws that have been currently existing. We have the Anti-Corruption Act, we have the Penal Code Act, we have the Inspectorate of Government Act 2002, the Public Finance Management Act 2015, and the Leadership Code Act 2002. So none of these laws. So you're saying we should keep and maintain these laws and not create any parallels. So you think these laws are enough to fight corruption? Before we veer off to our next conversation.
No, we are not talking about not passing any new law. We are only saying coming up with new institutions to fight corruption is the issue. We actually promote the issue of harmonizing these laws. For instance, we are still actually demanding and calling for passing of witness protection law. So it's not about the law. It's about bringing up new institutions whose harmonization of working together is not there. And in the end, making them get excuses for not working.
So
And secondly, it is also bringing up institutions that will require more from the citizens to pay.
All right.
So you find that right now what we're suffering most from is the money to pay for the institutions to actually do their work. Secondly, is to ensure that there is streamlined way of supervision to ensure that they deliver. Otherwise, when we create multiple centers of reporting and supervision, we are only making our institutions more inefficient.
I totally agree with you, because earlier, was it mid this year, we saw, you know, the IGG and of course the head of the State House Anti-Corruption Unit going somewhat head to head, and there was worry that is it competition now? And what you're saying is quite, warranted, so to speak. We totally understand that. Now, let's go to the witness protection law, which has taken so long from 2015. I want you to let us in on to what magnitude has this affected the process of fighting graft in the country?
Very big. You see, if there is anything that can enable this country to fight corruption, it is the power, it is the presence, is the existence of our own citizens as those who see what happens on a day-to-day basis, who are actually there to whistleblow, who are there to be ready to stand in court as witnesses. Now, in a situation where there is no law to really protect them, or if it is weak, then we have already weakened the fight. That is exactly what is happening in this country, where those who are involved in corruption are very powerful.
Right.
Really powerful. Very, very powerful, I repeat. And therefore, you also need a very powerful law to protect those who are relatively weak in position in society, but they have the information that can save this country. Billions, that can save billions, that can save lives of Ugandans that are dying out of corruption. Yeah. So actually, the issue is big.
And I really understand what Mr. Nixon is saying. Without a whistleblower law, a witness protection law, people will not come out, Mala, to actually name those officers who are engaged in swindling of public funds. So yes, witness protection law has to come into force. I do agree. So tell us about the Northern Uganda caravan. You're on a campaign to sensitize the masses in the north about corruption. Is that right?
That's very right. ActionAid Uganda, in collaboration with other civil society, that is the Anti-Corruption Coalition Uganda and Transparency International Uganda, are working together with the Inspectorate of Government, Uganda Police, and the Directorate of Ethics and Integrity to yet again have the sixth leg of the anti-corruption caravan. It is going to traverse 17 districts in the Bunyoro, West Nile, Acholi, and Lango sub-regions. It was flagged off yesterday by Mr. Okello, who is the Permanent Secretary for Ethics and Integrity, and other eminent people. This time round, we are actually saying that fighting corruption starts with me.
Correct.
So to every Ugandan that will be reached out there, This is a new renewal of the fight against corruption. But it is a citizen's duty to actually do that.
What will be the format of the messaging? Because you know that when you're trying to change people's mindset from what they're used to, because corruption thrives even down there. So what will be the messaging like? Because I want you to speak to that factor, because you know it's one thing to just have a truck moving around with messages and people in there and stuff like that. But what will be your strategy to ensure that it's not just any other, you know, initiative that you're seeing, but the messaging does touch to the hearts of these people and changes their mindsets, especially now that you're counting down to 2021?
Actually, you're very right that corruption really zeroes down to the mindset. And we think that changing that will be very powerful by putting the citizen at the center of this fight. Because it is them who will change this country when it is, if it is about changing corruption in this country. Therefore, the key message is that it is you and I to, one, begin to look at the wrong things and say no to it. The wrong actions, we should say no to it. Secondly, stop the silence about corruption. As a citizen, we must stop the silence and therefore report. And in this caravan, there is actually reporting of cases. In fact, it's reviving probably the lost hope that the citizens could have already had. There are also lost cases that they have already given up on.
Correct.
We are saying no. We are moving with the police that are themselves registering these cases afresh, recording them. We have investigative journalists from media houses in the region and from the country across that are actually doing documentation of these cases. So that is another. The other thing is that they themselves as citizens need to take citizen action on a daily basis. It's not just about the caravan. The caravan is there to shake and wake up the citizens, but that they must do their citizen action on a daily basis.
Mr. Nixon, according to some economists, they believe that massive apathy amongst the citizens of Uganda contributes to the culture of bribery and corruption in Uganda. You've heard of the saying that every man eats from his job. Doesn't this give some kind of a blessing to this vice?
I think, you see, it is like saying that Ugandans are all thieves, which is very wrong. And therefore, because they are all thieves, they love thieves and protect thieves. That is not true. The thing is that whatever is a vice, however small it is, its impact is very big. It is very wrong to say that all Ugandans actually love corruption and they are benefiting from it. These billions of Uganda shillings, trillions that are being stolen daily, there are very few people who are doing this. And they are extra complicated. They are very powerful. It is not the jiggered person in some regions
You're talking about the big money Mr. Nixon, you're talking about the big money that is being siphoned. I'm talking about the low bribery at the low level. Like you find a police officer and then you give him kitu kidogo. You get the point. Are the citizens themselves exacerbating corruption by those actions?
Before I move to that, my brother, I want to tell you that the corruption that is killing people with the jiggers, killing people with, you know, people are getting landless and they cannot find food is a high level corruption. That is even leading to the level of land grabs. You find a whole sub-county is being displaced off. This is the level of corruption we are talking about. And you cannot say therefore that that citizen that only has one mango tree on his compound and that's the only land is now remaining with is the person that is benefiting from this corruption. It is actually not that. However, I would want to agree that this corruption zeroes down to our families. Each family, it is the issue of values in each family. We need to ensure that parents are strengthening the education of our children on their value system right from the families.
All right.
Then the schools. And because you see, these people whom we are saying are high up there, they are not high up there. They are family members, they are fathers, they are mothers, they are brothers, they are uncles.
Okay.
So it means, therefore, when we do it that way, then we know that these people are part of us in all these villages. When they die, they are not buried at international conference.
Thank you for helping us put that in perspective. So the corruption that is endemic is at the top levels, not at the lower levels. Do you also believe there's a lack of moral courage to expose those people who are engaged in corruption?
Yes, we do. However, we think that there are many people who are ready to expose, but the environment is not conducive. They fear for their lives. Ugandans, many fear for their lives on a daily basis, and because of that, it has led to silence.
And you think the witness protection law will help
It will.
deal with that?
All right. Mr. Ogwal, you know, when you look at all these proposals that you gave out, of course, us not having parallel anti-corruption institutions being established, that's one, allocation of more funding to the existing ones, and also expediting the enactment of the witness protection law that you're speaking about. We're also looking at upholding electoral integrity. You know, all these proposals cannot stand independent of having a strong political will from them that are up there. So how do you plan on achieving that? Because once there's political will, you won't even have to fight to have all these other facets taken care of.
But again, it is interesting, and I like the way you're bringing all this together, because you know, political will is everything.
Yes.
And it is actually the hope of each citizen in this country when they go to cast their vote. Which also means that the power to actually change this country is in the hands of each citizen. We must each, as citizens of Uganda, speak to what we don't want. And that every time our MPs go back to us, we must tell them. Unfortunately, very few go back to the citizens. Very few politically elected people go and say, am I still doing right what you sent me for? Instead, we dictate against those who voted for us.
Some people believe...
So it is only that would change the political will. When our politicians begin to realize that they are servants, not masters, that they must go back and sit down with the electorate and seek to get a feedback on a regular basis. Otherwise, when they come to Kampala, like they were all born in Mulago, by the way, very few, if any, were born in Mulago. They sit in Kampala, they only buy food from supermarkets, and then they live on top of these hills in Kampala, and they read a few things from the newspapers, and argue as if they already know Uganda.
But what will it take? What will it take, Mr. Ogwal, if Romeo, you can allow me? What will it take for the citizens to get to that maturity level whereby voter bribery will be forgotten completely? Because we know that right now, when we get into that campaigning season, 2020, we'll just see it all. We've seen it all ever since, of course, time immemorial. Whenever we're getting into that campaigning period, what are people asking for? Just the other day, of course, you saw in the news that the young people who are, you know, put together and they're waiting for, you know, the presidential advisor to give them money, and they were totally disgruntled. And that particular, you know, lady did not turn up. And of course, we're talking about the newly appointed presidential advisor, Kusasira, and now we're looking at the young people who are saying, give me something small for me to vote you in.
Commercialization of politics.
Commercialization of politics. So when will we get to that point whereby the citizens understand the power they have and they're not easily swayed by kitu kidogo?
I think there is something very important that we are not telling the public. Our government has actually committed to at Africa regional level. It's called ACDEG, the African architecture. It's African. It's African. Sorry, it's a protocol which we have signed on governance, democracy, and governance, democracy, and elections. Now, Uganda was actually the 4th country to sign in 2007. It outlines our democratic principles and things we should do. It outlines how elections are supposed to be done in Africa. It also outlines issues of accountability of leaders. Unfortunately, Uganda has not ratified this protocol here. In fact, I hear people arguing about election, review of the election laws without reference to this ACDEG. Now, if we did that, it would empower the citizens to hold our elected leaders accountable.
Let's talk about
and
solutions.
because we have not done
Yeah.
that, it now means that we have hidden away the principles we have signed. That's number one. Two, it is true that if our population continue to remain and wallow in poverty, then half a kilogram of salt will actually make them sell away their votes. Therefore, issue of addressing poverty is important. Thirdly, services to the citizens, that is their right. But our current politicians take it as a favor. So they go on saying, I will bring to you these services, so it is me. No, those services are already given because the citizens pay the tax.
Right.
Even if it is a grant or a loan, it is contracted in the name and for the citizens.
Well, I'm getting some wonderful pointers right here from Mr. Nixon. Actually saying if we are to do away with commercialization of politics, first of all, deal with the poverty that is actually eating up the households in this country. Because if the people are empowered their households are developed, they won't have to, ask for kidogo from these politicians during campaign period. Now, another solution. Do you think it's a viable one if we were to expose and punish these officials in public? Is that a solution to deal with corruption?
It is. You see, two things are useful in life. Carrot and stick. You see, that's why right now we are actually saying, let us work so hard with citizens to identify people who are doing well, who are actually promoters of government delivering quality service.
Let's first talk about those who are not delivering.
With the what?
Let's first talk about those who
so
are not delivering.
You see, we make them be known as icons. But the other extreme also works. That let's identify these people who are actually a shame to this nation. Those who steal the drugs that should be in hospitals. Those who steal money from the education system. And our children are actually now having just about 7,000.
What punishment would you propose?
The punishment should be, number one, first get back what we citizens have lost through their theft. And by tracing...
Freeze all the accounts.
It is not only even freezing the accounts. Get to know what their properties are, and those should be taken on. And that's why we need laws to be strong enough.
Seize the assets, redistribute to the people.
Yes, that is one. Because we must first recover. This issue of saying take them to prison, no. First thing is get back what belongs to Uganda.
Let me ask
Number two, the laws on actually keeping them in prison must be to the maximum.
Not just 5 years.
No. These 5 years, do you know how many people could have died by a simple act of somebody actually eating money for immunization? You know how many children will die, and that's the future of this nation? And then they say they should have a future themselves. They should stay for life in prison.
Mr.
Life imprisonment.
Over the time, whenever we are having corruption cases being brought to the fore, if at all they're found, the people who are implicated are the enablers, them that are used, the ones that are told, Romeo, go and get me that. But them that are at the top of that mafia channel or mafia, kind of group, are never brought to the book. And never brought to book, so to speak. They're always protected. They're well connected. You know, just the other day, remember, was it early this year or late last year, I was hosting the IGG, Justice Mulyagonja, and she was saying that these are people who are well connected. You try to follow through with the case and phone calls are made and you're stopped at that.
Order from above.
Exactly. So how do we start identifying these people if they're well hidden in this channel of, you know, mafia?
I think the issue is not actually about how do we begin to identify. It is about dealing with that power around them. You see, ActionAid believes strongly that the injustices that we have in Uganda and in the world, and the poverty that we really do have, and the inequality is because of unequal and unjust distribution of power.
So where
and
do we
how
start?
it is used.
So where do we start?
And that is why you will find that as long as you have people at high level of government but are very undemocratic, there won't be any change. That's why deepening democracy means a lot. It means the concentration of power from... There are now people in Uganda who are institutional individuals.
Yes.
One person has got a power of a whole institution, and the institution is reduced to no power. And therefore, what we think is, if we begin to deepen democratic principles and practices, beginning from parties must hold their members to account.
Mr.
Where
Nixon,
did you get
we've
all
run
this
out of
from?
time.
Yes.
But thank you for having made the time to come speak with us. Maybe I'll just give you some 30 seconds to wrap up. You launched some awards on Friday,
Yes,
the National Integrity and Excellence Awards to fight corruption. How will these awards help beat corruption in Uganda?
Thank you very much. Yes, we launched the Integrity Award, and this is the time for citizens not to use another card of looking at those who have done very well in their districts or at national level. Let them be the ones to actually nominate. The forms are online with the different media houses and in the different regions of this country. And we have also appointed people of integrity that are going to vet them. At an appropriate time, we will let them know who this panel of eminent people are. And on the 4th of December, we will then unveil the people who are icons of integrity in this nation that our children should look to as, you know, those whom they should emulate. And I think when we begin to do this, we will be teaching the spirit of the nation.
Recognizing integral people who put their
Right.
country first. That is the main purpose of these Integrity and Excellence Awards. If you're right there and you know someone that is doing something that is positive for the community, they can nominate, I believe, Mr. Nixon?
Yes, please.
Yes, you can nominate your favorite person in that regard. We've been having the Interim Director, Program and Policy Action Aid Uganda, Henry Nixon Ogwal. Thank you very much. You've been very, 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 very vital and yeah. So let's take a very, very short breather. We'll be right back with our Tech Note conversation. Keep it here.